Well, hi, you guys. This is Heidi St. John. You have found me at the intersection of faith and culture. This is the Off the Bench podcast. Today, I'm going to do a little bit of political commentary. Obviously, the country's on fire with the guilty verdict coming down from a sham trial in New York. Reminds me a little bit of COVID and all of the lies that we heard coming out of the mainstream media on that. I'm going to be answering listener questions. This is Mailbox Monday. Today's podcast is sponsored by my friends at VidAngel. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Well, wow, you guys. So been a little while since I've been in the studio for Mailbox Monday, and I do declare the world's on fire. I'm going to read a couple of YouTube comments for you. The first one's coming in from a conversation that I had with my friend Alex Clark. By the way, I just got back from speaking at Turning Point USA for their Young Women's Leadership Summit. So exciting to see young women who want to raise children, who want to actually be women and embrace motherhood. And we talked about, women in careers and women in politics and women in marriage and women in children. And turns out God has a beautiful design for women. I'm going to be talking about that more in the days to come. Obviously, something I am very passionate about, having raised 7 children of my own. But this YouTube comment says this: I hate it when parents say, quote, "We need to keep our kids in public schools to witness to others." My question to them is, how vocal are you as an adult witnessing to those around you in your workplace? We're asking our kids to make an argument for something that we aren't equipped for or even willing to do ourselves. We can't ask our kids to witness as though they are fully confident adults. Yes, I agree with that, and I would take it one step farther. I mean, that kind of goes back to what I've said for years and years, which is you can't pass on what you don't possess. And so we put our kids in this system of education that is actually designed to take them away from their parent and to steer them away from faith and into secular humanism. The schools are religious. They are secular humanists. That's what they are, which is a religion in and of itself. But my question always is, why? Why are we having our kids swim through a cesspool to get a mediocre education? There's a million reasons why. We can talk about taking children out of our public schools and why they shouldn't be there. But the question for having them there should never be a question of whether or not they should be salt and light in the schools. You can't have salt, you can't give salt until you have salt. And these kids don't have it. And we're asking them to give something that they don't have. And you rightly pointed out, a lot of days parents either don't have the salt themselves to give, they haven't learned how to do it themselves, or they're just unwilling because they're afraid. I mean, we can't stand up in the workplace for the proper use of pronouns right now. We're so afraid. And so tell me how good you are at witnessing in that hostile environment, and then explain to me again why you think your child's going to be better equipped to do it than you are. You can't pass on what you don't possess. I love that comment. Another one came in on YouTube talking about my book, Mom Strong. She said, "Becoming Mom Strong was the best book. It blessed my family tremendously, a must read for all mothers." Thank you for sending that in. If you haven't picked up my book, Becoming Mom Strong, How to Fight with All That's in You for Your Family and Your Faith, I want to encourage you to do it. It is available anywhere that books are sold. Also, you guys, we are just at the beginning of a brand new study that I've written this month. It's called, Is That Really in the Bible? We're talking about a lot of different issues that are in the culture. We're also going to be dealing with colloquialisms and sayings that we hear thrown around all the time, like God will never give you more than you can handle, and judge not lest you be judged. The question of homosexuality, which comes up over and over and over and again, because so many churches now, and Pastor Phil and I just talked about this the other day, so many churches have become apostate now, meaning that they have turned away from the faith as it is been handed down to us for generations in the Bible, and they have created their own faith and their own gospel by tearing pages out of the Bible that they don't like, and thus creating a cut and paste theology. I would love to have you join me at the Faith That Speaks community. I teach live every Tuesday there, but you can download that study, use it for your women's Bible study. You can use it for a once a week meeting up with other moms, and not even mothers, actually. It's always my Bible studies are geared always towards women and young women, especially ages 13 and older. So you can pick those up. And for those of you who are mothers and you have young children at home, we include something in every study called Kids Strong. And so you can take what you're learning at the Faith That Speaks Bible study and teach your children how to defend their faith, and go over these same topics, but from an age-appropriate point of view, and inoculate your children against the lies of the world by teaching them truth when they are very little. Jesus said that when a student is fully trained, he'll be like his teacher, and so that means we need to be teaching our children to walk with the Lord. Annabelle in Kansas wrote in to ask about Trump's conviction. She said, Heidi, I love listening to your podcast and enjoyed your sessions in Branson. Thank you very much. I loved being there. I love the fire you bring in so many important topics. With Trump's guilty verdict, the Republican Party is going to be divided even further than it already is. How can the Republican Party rejoin together so that come election time, we don't hand over a win to the Democrats simply because we couldn't rally together? Well, I'll tell you what, Annabelle, you have hit the nail on the head when it comes to an analysis, a very short analysis of what's happening in the Republican Party right now. We are divided over everything under the sun. And I see it right here where I live. It is a disgusting display of immaturity and, frankly, an unwillingness to even bend a little tiny bit in the direction of somebody that you may not agree with 100% of the time. I think marriage is like this, right? We compromise in marriage. Successful marriages is the union of two forgivers, people who can forgive each other and move on in unity because we have a shared goal and a shared sense of vision. Without that shared sense of vision, without that shared goal, without this thing that we all want, which it used to be limited government, the government staying out of the affairs of ordinary Americans, the everyday affairs of ordinary Americans. We were for limited government. We were pro-life as a Republican Party. And so this problem that we have, this division that we have, this calling everybody a rhino if you don't agree on one thing or another, it kind of goes back to what we see in the church. And I'm addressing this also in my Bible study this month, where we're throwing out words like heresy. You're a heretic because you had a different thought on an eschatological issue that you read in the Bible. So maybe you're an amillennialist, maybe you're a millennialist, maybe you're a pre-tribber, maybe you don't believe in the rapture at all, or you think the dispensations can't be proven in Scripture, and your brother in Christ does. Well, that doesn't make him, wait for it, a heretic. If you call somebody a heretic, what you're saying is you're going to hell. Well, no one's going to hell over a view of the end times. I can tell you that right now. We are very clear, or we should be as Christians, on what qualifies us to spend eternity with the Lord and what will condemn a person to hell at the end of their life, right? And it has nothing to do with when Christ returns. Absolutely nothing. And so we see these divisions in the church. We should be able to love our brothers and sisters in Christ and have disagreements with them over theological issues. Of course, there are things that we have to agree on, right? We have to agree on the essentials of the gospel. Otherwise, we wind up in heretical territory because we lean toward Gnosticism. The Gnostics, remember, believed that Jesus was fully God but not fully man. That's actually a true heresy. There are some people that teach that the resurrection didn't happen. Well, you take the resurrection out of the story of Jesus Christ, and now you've changed the whole message of the gospel. That's heretical. Now, let's take this same idea and apply it to politics as we know it today, right? So we've got Christians, especially, this is really happening in the Republican Party. One thing I love about the conservative movement is we tend to be independent thinkers, right? We're not going to be so quick to fall for the COVID scam because we're going to be thinking for ourselves. We want to do our own homework. The problem comes when we arrive at different conclusions or different points of view. So let's say, Heidi St. John, for example, I'll just take myself. I am 100% committed to the pro-life agenda. I am an abortion abolitionist, meaning I believe abortion should be illegal in every circumstance. Yes, even for rape, even for the life of the mother. We never, in any other circumstance, would injure a child or execute a child for the sins of his father. We just wouldn't do that. The only reason we do it with the unborn is because we can't see them. We can't hear them scream. We're not there to witness this atrocity. And so it happens in a sort of sterilized environment, and we've allowed ourselves to make excuses. Now, having said that, I am an abortion abolitionist. I think abortion is wrong every day of the week and twice on Sunday. It is always wrong. It is never justified. Having said that, if I had to vote for someone who was pro-life except for cases of rape, incest, and the life of the mother. And my only choice was to vote for that guy or vote for a guy over here who would abort your baby up to 9 months gestation with no cause at all. Let's say your baby's a girl and you wanted a boy, abortion, right? Or you're using abortion as birth control. You think there should be no qualifiers on abortion, no restrictions on abortion. If the choice is that guy versus the guy who is predominantly pro-life, but I'm still working on him because he doesn't get that you don't kill a baby for the sins of its father, but he thinks it's a merciful approach, right? So merciful to the mother, she was just raped, and so therefore we shouldn't make her have the baby. If this is my choice, a guy who I would say is not sloppy, that's not the right word, but sort of a squishy pro-lifer. Like Heidi's not a squishy pro-lifer. I am a hardcore pro-life, sun up to sundown, every day of the week. But I would vote for the squishy pro-lifer to keep the hardcore pro-choicer out of office. And I'm watching Christians who are like, well, I would never do that. Why? Why would you not take a step in the right direction? We want to take a step in the right direction. And the Republican Party is all messed up because we've got ideologues in various corners for various issues in the Republican Party that absolutely cannot come together because they don't want to be seen as squishy. They don't want to be seen as giving any ground at all. Well, guess what? Politics is about giving a little bit of ground. It's about compromise. It's about sharing your ideas and convincing the other side, or even that person who might be on your side but just hasn't decided. You make a good enough argument, you make a good enough case, so they come around to your way of thinking. We win in politics through multiplication, not through division. And many, many, many Republicans have not yet figured it out, and that is why we continue to lose. And we will continue to lose until we figure it out. Now let's get to Trump, because to me, the American people, I think, by far and away, understand that this was lawfare, right? That we have weaponized Joe Biden and the administration under Joe Biden, who is a corrupt, wicked human being. They have weaponized the Department of Justice to persecute political opponents. This isn't just happening to President Trump. This is happening to a praying grandmother who's now been sentenced to 2 years in prison. This is happening to a woman who waved a Trump flag outside of a Biden caravan, and now they're prosecuting her under the KKK law, saying that she inflicted emotional damage on the people on the bus. That's unjust. That is wrong. It is the weaponization of our legal system. Our legal system is there so that we can prosecute actual criminals, not grandmothers that pray outside of abortion clinics, which is frankly what she's been instructed to do in Scripture. We are to intercede for those who are being taken away to death. And if that doesn't describe abortion, I don't know what does. So it is obvious to me, and I think to most of the American people, that the Biden administration has weaponized our justice system. Justice is no longer blind. We had a kangaroo court in a banana republic sentence President Trump in a case that in any other state in the union would have been a bunch of misdemeanors that half those guys have done themselves. And they lumped them all together, turned it into a felony, tried him in a state and in a jurisdiction where he asked to be removed from because he knew, and so does everyone else, that the tone and the tenor of putting him on trial in the state of New York was going to work against him. And that's exactly what happened. And in fact, the day before President Trump was so-called convicted of this so-called felony, he got in front of the microphone. This is when I knew that something was seriously wrong. He got in front of the microphone, and it was the first time I've ever seen Trump look even remotely defeated. And he said, Mother Teresa could not evade these charges. He saw the handwriting on the wall. Now, I think that the Supreme Court's going to overturn this. I think these convictions are going to be overturned. I actually think this is probably going to turn out to be better for Trump in the long run, but it's given us a really good taste here in the United States of what happens when we weaponize our justice system to attack and go after political opponents. Joe Biden is losing in the polls, and that is why the Biden administration is trying to ruin him. They're trying to ruin his reputation. They're trying to ruin him financially. They're trying to ruin him emotionally. They're trying to wear him down. Trump is an extraordinary human being. Now, when I say he's an extraordinary human being, that doesn't mean I agree with everything he does. I absolutely don't. There are a lot of things that he said that I've just been like scratching my head going, wow, someone needs to take the microphone away from him right now. Forthwith, take it away, right? I think Trump is arrogant. Someone asked me the other day if I think Trump's a Christian. No, I don't. Jesus said, you'll know him by your fruit. I haven't seen anything in President Trump's life that makes me think he has had an encounter with the living God. Now, am I going to vote for him in 2024? Absolutely. I'm going to run to vote for that guy in 2024. I'm going to vote early for him. I'm going to vote. The day I get my ballot in the mail, I'm going to vote for President Trump. Why? Because President Trump has the best, I believe, the best interest of our nation at heart. People say, well, he's getting soft on abortion. I agree. I'm not happy with some of the stuff that he has said on abortion lately. I disagree with him on his position on IVF. I disagree with him. But he is still a much better candidate than the weak Joe Biden, who is clearly suffering from dementia. This guy can't find his way out of a paper bag. And just a couple of days ago, an article came out in the Wall Street Journal talking about how Joe Biden's mental acuity has been on the decline for a very long time. And the Biden White House now is absolutely freaking out, asking the Democrats to pull back on this Wall Street Journal report, because it's reported that President Trump is, wait for it, failing mentally. And he is. He's absolutely failing mentally. Something is terribly wrong. And so I want you to pay attention to what the Democrats are doing right now. This shouldn't divide the Republicans. We should be able to walk in lockstep on this. You guys, our southern border is a nightmare. And so for Biden to get out there, the only reason he had to do something, because he's losing, even to the Democrats, he's losing. He's losing when it comes to talking about what's happening on our southern border. And he did this. The Democrats are directly responsible for what's going on our southern border. So Joe Biden gets out there and he mumbles and stumbles and tries to talk with any kind of clarity, which of course he can't. He's reading his teleprompter, and what is he doing? He's blaming the crisis on the southern border on the Republicans. Okay. You do that. You blame what's happening on our southern border on the Democrats. It's absolutely ridiculous that this is what's going on. And to me, as we see the White House now trying to get out ahead of these stories, if the Wall Street Journal is reporting that President Biden is struggling with his mental acuity, which it's obvious you don't have to be at a closed door meeting with this guy to see that he doesn't put his socks on by himself. The guy's got help, all right? And so he's not really in charge of the country, which means somebody else is. I still think that something's going to happen. I don't think he's going to make it to Election Day. Frankly, I'd be surprised if he makes it to the DNC. And if he does, I think something's going to happen shortly thereafter, whereby they don't give the voters a chance to pick his replacement, because they can do that after the DNC has their huge convention coming up later on this summer. And I think we're going to see shenanigans like we have never seen before, because the Democrats are desperate to retain power, and they're losing it. And they're losing to President Trump. And so I'm going to get behind President Trump. I may have disagreements with him, but I'm going to get behind his run for the president of the United States, because he is the guy for the job. And he's the only guy that's going to make it to the ballot that has any shot at winning, which brings me to the Republican Party here in Washington State. There is a lot of infighting happening here now. In the Republican Party. It's a Republican primary, right? This is the time that we duke it out. So great, fine, good, duke it out. But don't turn on the people in a primary who would otherwise agree with you. So if I vote for somebody else in the primary, so I have made my choice, I'm going to be voting for Dave Reichert for governor in the Republican primary here in Washington State. The reason I'm doing it is I think he's a good candidate. Do I agree with him on every single issue? 100%? No. Do I think he's got a really good shot at beating the Democrat opponent? Absolutely. The guy has incredibly good name ID in King County, which is what it takes to win. That's what it takes to win. It takes good name ID and it takes money. He has both of those things. You say, well, I don't like that. Well, it doesn't matter if you like it or if you don't like it. That is what it takes to win elections in the United States. And so I'm going to put my voice and my vote behind the guy who I think has the best chance of winning against a Democrat opponent in a very blue state, which is the state of Washington. And so what I hope to see, and I have yet to see it, because the bullying and the infighting in the Republican Party was just as bad when I was running for Congress. And I saw it up close and personal, and I don't want anything to do with a party like that. I just don't. And what needs to happen is when the primary is over and the winners come out on the other side, we need to figure out how we can work together to get those people elected. And I'm already hearing people threatening, well, if my guy doesn't win in the primary, I'm just going to sit it out. Okay, you do that. You sit it out, and then we will lose because you sat it out. That's why we're losing. We're losing because the Republicans are running these campaigns through division and not through multiplication. I ran in a very heated, very, very difficult primary in 2022. And the person that I ran against ran an absolute scorched earth campaign. And now he's going back, he's running again. Now he's going back to many of the people that voted for me, and they still don't want to vote for him. And the reason they don't want to vote for him is because he scorched the earth. You can't scorch the earth and then sit back and scratch your head and wonder why nothing will grow. That's why. We've got to stop with these scorched earth campaigns. And until we do, the Republican Party is going to continue to struggle. We can say how dangerous and how devious and how demonic the Democrat Party is, but I'll tell you what, they're doing one thing right. They walk in lockstep, and that is how they defeat the Republicans. Republicans are over here running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and we're fighting with each other, and we're pecking at each other, and we're turning our swords on each other instead of on the enemy. Get it together, you guys. Duke this stuff out in the Republican primaries. Say what you believe to be true. You can say it with respect. You can say it with kindness. You can disagree with someone who would otherwise you would agree with. Republican primaries are just brutal. It's really sad, I think, because I think that everyone who runs for office should have a voice. If someone is courageous enough, I may disagree with them, but if they're courageous enough and they have enough chutzpah and enough desire and enough love for this community and for their country and for their state to run for office, then they deserve to be heard. And for example, the Clark County Republican Party, which is filled with people who apparently forgot about the process, they are unwilling to even allow fellow Republicans to have a voice in the party because they think they have chosen who should make it to the top two. That's not how the system works. When someone says, I want to run for office, they should have their voices heard. Their voices should be heard. The voters are the ones who will decide. And until we get this right, and we start again to be the party of Ronald Reagan, and we give a voice to those who are running in a Republican primary. We give them a voice, let them make their case. And I may choose, after hearing you make your case, I may choose to not vote for you. But that's my right as a voter. But the Republican Party platform says everyone who's running to represent the Republicans has a right to be heard, has a right to be heard. And so to that end, we are hosting here at Friendly Planet Action. We're going to be hosting some including my former opponent, Jamie Herrera Butler, who used to be a congresswoman from Washington State's 3rd Congressional. Many of you will remember that I ran against her in 2022. But you want to hear something crazy? Jamie Herrera Butler and Heidi St. John have become friends. We are not enemies. We're not enemies. And she's running now for Washington Lands Commissioner here in the state, and I want to hear what she has to say. And so we're going to be hosting her and several other people who are running for office. And I will post more about that. Follow my social media. I'll be posting a little bit more about it as we continue moving toward the elections. But I'm here to tell you guys right now that until we come together and until we can agree together that we are going to give voices and not turn on people who are fellow Republicans. Just because I have a disagreement with somebody doesn't mean that that person is my enemy. I can have a political disagreement with a fellow Republican and not be that person's enemy. I hope you guys are picking up what I'm putting down, because until we get this right, we are going to continue to lose elections in the state of Washington and around the country. So when people say to me, I can't believe you're going to vote for President Trump, he doesn't believe in the life of the mother for rape and incest. And I would tell you, I disagree with him, but I will vote for him because I want to move the ball forward. And I know that his position on abortion is going to be infinitely better than the criminal opinions on abortion coming out of the Democrat Party and the Biden administration and whoever else is running in Washington State under the Democrat platform. We are not voting for personality. We are voting for policy. Policy is king. Politics determines policy, and policy shapes a nation. So we should be voting not on personality, but on policy. If we're just voting on personality, then yes. I'm not a super fan of Trump or Joe Biden, but I'm not voting for personality. I'm voting for policy, and you should be too. So something for you guys to think about. I think we're going to continue to see things spiraling into insanity, both here in Washington state and around the country as the elections heat up. Crime and housing, the forefront of the illegal immigration discussion here in the United States. And a top GOP lawmaker said this week that the toll it takes on public schools and students is being overlooked. He's trying to correct that. Aaron Bean, who's a Republican out of Florida, then the chairman of the Early Childhood Education Committee in the House, said the migrant influx from the porous southern border is wreaking havoc on U.S. schools. I'm here to tell you guys right now, we know that over 10 million people have illegally entered this country since Joe Biden took office 3 years ago. We say this is what's happening, but we haven't begun to feel the sting of what it is going to do, what it is going to tax this country on in terms of housing, in terms of healthcare, in terms of our supply here in the country. We are a nation of laws, and if we don't pay attention to the law, very first law, you got to have permission to enter somebody's house. If you come to Heidi St. John's house and you didn't ask for permission and you didn't knock at my door and I don't know who you are and you know who just walks in my door without asking? My family, my friends, people that I know. Come on over. Door's always open. I don't know you. Door's locked. Knock. This is the basic. This is immigration 101. This is border policy 101. And the Biden administration knows it. What they're hoping for is that these guys will become voters. That's why they've allowed the border to become so porous. On the other hand, I would say at this point, I agree with my friend Rick Green on this issue. Probably we're going to have to change strategy about this because obviously we've opened up our borders now and the damage is done. The damage is done. Joe Biden's trying to slow down the damage, not stop the damage. He's not trying to stop the illegal flow of immigrants across our southern border. What he's doing is he's election day pandering. We are still having, up to 2,500 people come across the border every day. We'll just add that to the 10 million. What could possibly go wrong? This guy is a creep and a criminal. And his very first responsibility as president of the United States is to protect us from invasion. And we have an invasion happening on our southern border. That's what's going on the southern border. And so I don't think we've begun to see the damage that this man has inflicted upon our country. I think it's going to play out in even worse forms in the months and years to come. I'm not trying to scare you guys, and this is why I agree with my friend Rick Green on this issue. I think we got to start teaching the principles of freedom to people that are here in this country, whether they came across illegally or whether they didn't. We are a nation of laws. We believe in limited government. Most of these guys have come from countries, well, some of them are here because they hate us, right? And that's going to be a whole separate problem. But when you're talking about people that are fleeing Mexico and Nicaragua and El Salvador, some of them genuinely wanting to come over here for a better life, although you have to question when someone wants a better life in the first place, the first thing they do is break your law. When they come into your country, kind of sours me a little bit on what's happening. But I agree with Rick that I think it's time for us to start teaching the principles of freedom again. They're not being taught in our public schools. And so we have kids now who are graduating and they think communism is a good idea. And they think, Mao, he wasn't such a bad guy. And socialism, yay, socialism. This is why I vehemently oppose Americans saying that the government is responsible to pay for our child's education. I oppose this stuff. I oppose it in homeschooling. Why are we so stuck on the government bottle? How about we just work to lower taxes so we can keep some of our own money and decide where we want to put it instead of the government takes it away from us and then we have to beg for it back in the form of a voucher? No, we should be campaigning on lower taxes. Let the hardworking American people keep their own money. Hey, there's an idea. But we're watching now a generation of young people who have been trained in socialist ideology and they don't even know it. A socialist ideology says that the government can tell you when to get a shot. A socialist ideology says that the government is responsible to make sure children get an education. A socialist ideology says that the government is responsible for your health care. The founding fathers knew otherwise. They were for limited government. Shoot fire, we went to war over a tax on tea, some of you will remember. And so unless and until we again begin to embrace the principles of freedom and limited government that made the United States the greatest nation on the face of the earth, we're going to continue the spiral that we are on into the decline and ultimately the destruction of freedom as we know it in the United States of America. That's why elections matter. That's why it matters that we stop scorching the earth in Republican primaries and get our heads screwed on straight and start caring about things again that really matter. Woo! I am on fire today. I'm on fire today. You guys, I care about this country. It's why I ran for office. I care about this country. It's why I want my children and the rising generation to know the Bible, to be able to stand in defense of our freedom, to know it's the truth that sets you free, right? Most of the people that came over to this country and that made laws for our country when our country was founded did so out of respect for and an understanding of Mosaic law that comes out of it, wait for it, the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch. We should know the Bible. As God's people, we should be engaged, and instead we're running from the process. I saw a pastor friend of mine, who I won't name on my show today, but I saw him on his Facebook account the other day saying that Christians should stay out of politics. I wish he didn't live so far away. I want to go to that guy's house and say, how's that working for you? Because that's what we've been doing for the last 50 years. Christians should be involved in politics. And when we remove ourselves and when we remove those who understand the history of this country and really care about limited government and we want freedom, right? We care about freedom. When those people don't run for office, we get the Joe Bidens of the world and the Ocasio-Cortezes of the world. This is what we've been left with. And our country is in a steep decline right now. And so while I may have had a disagreement with President Trump, and while I do have some ongoing disagreements with some of my friends in the Republican Party, I'm going to work for unity. We win through multiplication and not through division. The same thing is true in our churches. The same thing is true in our families. We win through multiplication. Stop dividing over issues that we need to be able to go, okay, I disagree with you on this. Let's pick it up another day. But for right now, we're going to march lockstep with each other and we're going to get some better people elected than what's in there now. Someone said to me, well, I don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils. Well, you guys have heard me say this before. I'm going to say it again at the risk of repeating myself. We are always voting for the lesser of two evils. Always. You could be voting for the Pope and Mother Teresa, and one against the other, you'd be voting for the lesser of two evils. You could be voting for Heidi St. John and my friend Pastor Phil Hopper, and you'd still be voting for, wait for it, the lesser of two evils. There is no perfect person on the face of the earth. We are always voting for the lesser of two evils. Find out who's running where you're running. Don't let the left and the malaise of the Republican Party keep you from participating in the greatest nation on the face of the earth as we come to an election season. It is your civic responsibility, and in fact, it is your duty as an American citizen to become involved in what's happening and to do so from a position of strength. One more thing before I go today. I believe, and I've said this before, we're living in an extraordinary time in the history of our country. And it's a spiritual battle. People say, well, there you go. You just said it. It's a spiritual battle, so it doesn't matter if we vote. No. We continue to put people forth in this country to run for office who don't know the Lord. They may be moral people, but we cannot continue to send people to the front lines of a very real spiritual battle who cannot wield a spiritual weapon. We're sending people to the front lines of spiritual battles every single day who cannot wield a spiritual weapon, can't even pick one up. And we're expecting a different result. And we simply will not get it. We will not get a different result until God's people again begin to engage. Find out who's running, right? The lots have already been cast for this election cycle. You may say, well, I don't like my choices. Well, figure out who your best choice is and get behind him with your time, your treasure, your prayers, your encouragement. Find out. It should matter to us. This is spiritual and it requires God's people to pray. I remember, and some of you guys will remember this, the night that President Trump beat Hillary Clinton in 2016. I remember. And I know that it was because of prayer. I know it. It was because of prayer. It was because of fasting. It was because God's people began to pick up the weapons of their warfare and stop being shamed into silence by other members of the church who say that Christians don't belong in politics. It simply isn't true. We belong in medicine. We belong in entertainment. We belong in business. We belong in education. We belong in politics. Yes, we belong in all these areas. Shine your light. Wherever God calls you, shine your light. And so we look for the people who are willing to shine their light into the darkest recesses of our government. And then we pray for them and we get behind them. And that is how we win. I think if God's people would engage again, we would see systemic change in the country. Why? Because we know that the answers that we're looking for are actually held in a heart change. It's a heart change. So if I see someone who has won an election, Marie Gluesenkamp Perez comes to mind. She won the election in 2022, and so now she's a Democrat. She holds that seat. I don't like it. I'm going to vote for someone else to replace her. My vote's going to go behind Leslie Llewellyn in a Republican primary here in Washington's 3rd congressional district. And if Marie Gluesenkamp Perez gets elected again, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to pray for her. I'm going to pray for her. I'm going to pray that God surrounds her by people that walk with him and know his word. Because if she became a Christian, then the way she saw politics would change. Are you guys praying for your elected officials? Are you praying for the men and women who currently hold seats in office? We're instructed to pray for them. The gospel changes things. If we could pray for those men and women who are in office, and we started seeing people begin to walk with God and to make decisions based on policy that reflected his heart toward human beings. By the way, God's a big fan of walls. God's the inventor of nations. The Bible teaches us that when the righteous are in power, the people rejoice. But when the wicked are in power, they groan. Boy, we're seeing a lot of that right now. So pray for the people that are in a position, even if you don't like them. Even if they're on the other side of the aisle, pray for him. Pray for him. You serve the same God that parted the Red Sea so the Israelites could escape Pharaoh. You serve the same God that spoke the world into being. The same God that brought down the walls of Jericho is still moving mountains today. The question is, will God's people engage and work with God, or will we sit on the sidelines and just expect him to do it without us? God has a role for you to play. And I, for one, am encouraged to see what happens when God's people get off the bench and onto the battlefield. That's all I've got time for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Today's show is being brought to you by my friends at VidAngel. Go to vidangel.com/Heidi. And you guys, again, you can watch television the way you want to watch it. Anything that's streaming, you can stream through vidangel.com/Heidi. Get 30 days for free. vidangel.com/Heidi. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you'll join me at my Bible study this month. We're doing a study called Is That Really in the Bible? We're going to be tackling things like the issue of male and female. And what does God say about homosexuality? Is it different than any other kind of sin in the Bible? Does God see it differently? The short answer is no. All sin separates us from God. But we're going to address those little nitpicky things where people who don't know the Word of God would say, well, if you're against homosexuality, then you probably shouldn't wear mixed threads in your clothing, because they took that out of the book of Leviticus. This is a straw man argument. We're going to talk about it this month at my Bible study. Is that really in the Bible? And you can find it by going to faiththatspeaks.com. Thank you guys for coming out to hear me speak. I will be coming to Denver, Colorado for the Czech conference this next weekend, and then I'll be in Washington, D.C. Both of those events can be found at my website, HeidiSt.John.com/events. We love you guys. Thanks for listening today. Thanks for leaving reviews. I'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to me directly, HeidiSt.John.com/Mailbox Monday. Those come directly to me, and I would love to hear from you. Thank you for leaving reviews at YouTube and over at iTunes and at Spotify. You guys are making a difference and helping us get a message out to a new generation. So we appreciate it. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you right back here again at the intersection of faith